That banner's at the bottom. Get rid of that. Okay, well. I'm gonna apologize in advance if this video cuts. But, this video is probably gonna cut because for the channel update, to get this out of the way, I have been on vacation for about a week and some change. And for the past almost 2 weeks, my internet has been beyond terrible. It has been completely unusable. When I have had it working, the connection speed's been terrible. You hear that sound in the background. That is my PS4 right now because of how bad my internet is. It is overworking. My PS4 is massively overworked because of this. So I'll apologize in advance if the video cuts out. Part of the issues as to why I have not been able to upload a lot of content are due to the fact that I have not been able to get consistent internet. A lot of the games I primarily play are games that require a decent amount of internet. Mortal Kombat, Evil Dead, Killing Floor. These are applications that require a stable internet connection. And if I'm not able to get a stable enough internet, I can't play them. Evil Dead in particular, I haven't been able to play because a lot of my player base that I've been playing with, outside of, just solo queuing, and this game is in a terrible state for solo queue, it won't play because the game crashes. Like tonight, we got 3 good games, our 4th game crash. And when I say good games, I don't mean good games as in good games play style. I mean they just didn't. That's a good game. For some of the other games I've played, like Overwatch 2 Overwatch is basically dead now. You will not see an Overwatch video anymore with Overwatch 2. And I am planning on making a tier list after this patch came out because we do have the introduction of the blacksmith. David, I need to finish leveling. The blacksmith, I need to re-level. But I did want to cover Mia. So this is going to be a quick guide for Mia. I'm not going to keep it too long. But I wanted to throw that little channel update in the beginning. So I am in the process of looking to move. And hopefully I can move relatively shortly. So if you are a subscriber and you do watch my content regularly, it is going to be a slow trickle feed for right now, between the work schedule and the internet issues. So looking at Mia was introduced a while ago. We're looking a full patch ago. And I've had a lot of time. She's taken the single most amount of time to get a judgment on compared to any other survivor that I've played. Her judgment took me a while because she has a very conflicting moveset. And the main thing that I want to cover with her, she is right now, in my opinion, she is the worst of the 4 warriors. And we are in a warrior-dominant meta, particularly with the inclusion of the blacksmith, particularly with the nerfs to balance bars. Melee damage is more important than melee balance. The leaders receive Pink F reworks to what they provide for Pink F, and the blacksmith ability to craft melee weapons heavily leans the game towards melee. So Mia, ideally, would be in a good situation. Here's the problem that Mia suffers from. So Mia is a standard warrior. She has a standard warrior stats, which is a base of 1300 health. She has a base of 50% plus melee and minus 50% to her gun skill. So she's definitely going to be saying, you're going to have to forgive me as well if I call her Mia Winters instead of Mia Allen. I'm not a fan of the Evil Dead movie, the remake Evil Dead movie. But I'm not really a fan of I'm not really a fan of the of Mia Winters from Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village, but at least she's got some good porn. Anyways, now that the demonetization part is out the way, her base kit is split very much between 3 separate abilities that make it very difficult to justify her playing style. So she's a standard warrior. So let's start with what the standard warrior build is, in my opinion. If I was making a standard warrior build, this is my standard warrior build. Everybody kind of knows this. This is what I like to run. This is 3 points into the last word, so every last hit of your combo, every 4th swing, gets 50% bonus damage, and the last hit of your combo is always the highest. Artful Dodger 3, this gives you an extra dodge, and if you put your pink F points in, it gets you closer to getting a third dodge. That's the reason why I run the extra points, even though people say, no, you shouldn't run the extra points. Industrial Strength, 25% bonus health. This takes you from around 13 to about 1550, 1600 without the pink F upgrades. Devastating Force, extra 15%. This raises your base melee damage from 50% to 65%, and stings like a bee at 3, because I primarily use light attacks, raising it from 65% to 80% melee. This is my standard build. Now, we'll reset, and we'll explain why she is so conflicting. The first mechanic to explain is her fear mechanic. This really is what makes her unique compared to the other warriors, because her other two abilities are both knockoff abilities that drag her down. So, your first ability is actually your passive ability, in my opinion. This is Fear Leads to Anger. When Mia's fear level reaches a specific threshold, her damage will increase as her fear rises. The more scared she is, the more damage she deals. What does this mean? So this means that any fear above 20 gives you 1% damage, capping at 40%. So a max fear Mia deals 40% bonus damage. Now this also affects guns. I do want to mention that. This is not just melee, that is gun damage as well. Which is pretty nice that she can actually offset her gun damage a little bit, but it's better for the melee weapons. So, now you have, on the standard build that we covered earlier, which, let's just do this. Okay, so on a build like this, right here, where you're at 80%, Fear Leads to Anger at max fear gives you an additional 40%. So now you're at 120% melee damage. So if I am using, Sledgehammer, which has a base total of 80, now on a light attack, I'm doing about 178 without the damage scaling of Last Word. That's pretty good base numbers at max fear with a good build. Now, the problem with this is that this incentivizes you to stay at high fear levels, which means you are a high possession threat. Now, to counteract this, you have your active ability, Uncontrollable. When activated, Mia cannot be possessed. This lasts for 25 seconds. While she is in her, which will lead to newer players, or players that are confused, swinging into you and wasting ammo or wasting time trying to depossess you for no reason. While she is in her unpossessable mode, she gets a 20% melee damage bonus. So now you're taking your 120% max damage build to 140%, which is absurd. However, her fear also increases 3 per second and cannot be drained. When the ability ends, you get a drop of 8 fear per kill earned. So the way this is supposed to synergize is if you are at high fear, you pop Uncontrollable to make it so that while you're fighting, you don't get possessed and turn on your teammates. And if you get enough kills, at the end of it, you'll drop below that fear threshold. And if you're at low fear, when you activate the ability, you can use it as a way to generate your fear, because you are just passively skyrocketing fear, which is giving you more damage for Fear Leads to Anger. So these two abilities synergize very well and are what make her as dangerous as she is. Now, here is the problem with this. There is a problem on each end. Situations where you don't want to be possessed are very few and far between. At least where you will get value. If everybody around you is low health, you don't want to get possessed, obviously. But I've played with Mia a couple games tonight even, where the demon just waited me out. The demon, I popped my ability at the start of the engagement. The demon literally just waited for me to run out of ability. And as soon as my ability ended, one demon dash, instant possession. Nothing could be done to reduce fear. I wiped my entire team. My entire team died at my hands. Why? Damage build. If you... Even with the fear reduction, it's very difficult to reduce your fear low enough. And when you do reduce your fear low enough, now you're losing a lot of bonus damage. She has the potential for the single highest amount of bonus damage on a singular character. Because of how her build can stack. So I'll explain a little bit of that. But the problem with this build is that Uncontrollable has no real situation. If you want to compare this to a character like Henry, so Henry's unstoppable ability, which makes him damage immune and stun immune for 7 seconds, is much more valuable. While he still can be possessed, it enables him to interact with objects without being interrupted, which is the main thing. He can get into a car and drive away without a demon knocking him out of the car. He can revive somebody. He can resurrect at an altar. He can start an objective. He can collect a map piece. He can pop a Shemp or an amulet that other characters couldn't do because of the stun. Demon stun is more important. Now, if a demon, the one way that Henry gets countered, Mia is immune to. Because when Henry's in his power, he can still be possessed. When Mia's in her power, she can still be stunned, but she can't be possessed. And the issue with it is this ability is only good, in my opinion, in 2 situations. It's good if you know the demon is actively looking to possess you. It buys you a small amount of time to run away from your team, which is not the intended synergy of this perk, in my opinion. It is designed for you to use it in combat, but against crowds, it serves no purpose. If your goal is to pop Uncontrollable, get your damage bonus, and just go into a crowd and start swinging to massively reduce your fear, you know who's a better character for that? Skadi. She's a much weaker version of Skadi, because Skadi has an active damage ability. He deals area damage on his attacks and reduces fear per kill. Now, it's not as much fear per kill as hers is, but he's better at clearing a crowd than she is, which I'll get to the Skadi comparison in a little bit. She is not good for crowd control. She's just like any other warrior for crowd control. I would put her at 2, maybe 3. Maybe you give an argument for Warrior Ash because of the shield pop. Now, Fear Leads to Anger is a great ability if you play around the high fear. If your team is okay with you destroying everything in sight, at the cost of if you get possessed, you're going to kill your entire team, this strategy works. But it is very glass cannon. And it also means you don't want to give her good weapons, because those weapons come back to hurt you. And I just want to mention, Puppeteer is the bane of your existence, because if they're running the tree where they deal more damage when they possess you, you will never get over getting possessed. You will wipe anybody around you. It leads Mia to being a great solo survivor if you want to run off and do your own thing, because at the start of a game, you can grab a common melee weapon, jump in a car, drive away, pop your power, start brawling with the demon. This lets you synergize very well with that. However, she sucks if you are playing in a group, because you are always going to be a liability to your teammates, unless they are working together and running around. Now, what about Heavy Rain? This is the worst ability out of her 4. And there's quite a simple explanation. The goal is that each swing of a heavy attack takes away a percentage of your damage and changes it to bleed damage over 5 seconds. Now, warriors are very easy to just swing once, swing twice, kill whatever's in front of them. With the exception of boss or elite units. And even then, in some cases, elite units can just crumble. Scotty, with a common lumberjack. Scotty is the character she is directly competing with for her heavy is because, one, heavy attacks are more likely to be interrupted. So, her ability is a single target heavy. You smack a target, you're dealing less damage. Yes, you get bleed damage over time, but it basically means that the last hit of your combo should be a heavy. So you go light, 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 heavy, in order to get the bonus damage and bleed. The only time this is effective is against big, chunky targets. Against bosses. Possessed elites. You're not getting enough against possessed basics because most of them attack fast enough to interrupt you. It's not good for crowd control. It's not good for F-chaining. Scotty has a massive advantage. Not only is his numbers better, because he hits in an area, it stacks, and it's more damage. It's 13% instead of 10%. And then you have the fact that it's area damage. So, she really struggles in that capacity. This ability is not good. You're only going to use it against bosses, elites, sometimes a possessed unit. That's the only time. You should never be running this against basic units. You can go one swing finisher, sometimes one swing. And last up, you have the Weapon Master Machete, which is very similar to Kelly's Meat Hammer Master. The number is much less, but that's because her damage scaling is ridiculous. But, basically it just means it gives you an extra option to build. So you can build all your warriors a bit differently. So, it's not enough to move the needle. It essentially just means if you are building her as a strict one-handed character, that now the mace is no longer your top option. You can run a machete, and the bonuses will carry you over. So, covering your basic build, you have your glass cannon, you have shit Scotty, and you have shit Kelly. This is part of the reason why she's one of the weaker characters. And Fear leads to anger and uncontrollable, giving her this stacking damage bonus at full fear. By the way, I want to mention, Demon Knights. You don't even have to use her to be effective. You can just possess her and end your possession. And that will automatically drop her fear down to where she can't 1v1 you. If you're about to summon a boss unit, or if you're about to summon a lot of units and you don't want them to be wrecked, possess her first, immediately cancel it. Drops the fear down. Remember, your fear drops instantly. It doesn't once you come out of that possession. You don't have to do any damage with her. You can just possess her, end it right away. For about 100, 150 energy, you take away her biggest strength. So, how are we going to build her? In my opinion, this is the bare minimum build right here. You're 1 point into the last word to increase your options. You're 1 point in Artful Dodger. This gives you your second dodge. I forget if it's 1 or 2. 4 into Industrial Strength to make you tankier. 4 into Devastating Force. That puts you at 65%. The 1 Cutting Blow, the 1 Razor's Edge, just filler perks to get to Sting Like a Bee. And you want to stay with Sting Like a Bee. Now, this is where we're going to go different. The build that I use is very different to other characters. If you want to stack maximum damage on to anger, then what I would do is this. You want to go into two-handed light attack. So, 50 base, 40, another 40 on fear, so now you're at 90. Devastating force, 105. 120. Two-handed, 135. Uncontrollable, 155. So, with your best warrior build, it's 155% for the duration of uncontrollable on all your light attacks before last word scaling, which is absurd. This is your best straight damage build. This is what I recommend. If you want to go straight machete build, I find the machete to be a very interesting build for her. I don't find it to be particularly effective, but this is the machete build, which is going to build into Sting Like a Bee, one-handed, Fighting Shape, or Second Wind, either or. I mean, Second Wind is really only good if you're putting a bunch of points into it. Fighting Shape is slightly better in my opinion, just at the start of the game. Second Wind really, if you're only putting 1 point in, Second Wind's not great. Second Wind is great if you could put the 3 points into it, but if you can't put 3 points into it, I usually go Fighting Shape. What you could do, alternatively, is if you don't want some of the extra combo or the extra stamina, you could take those out and you could start to build into the sharpness for the dismemberment. I don't recommend that as much. This build is heavily leaning towards machete, but you could do, I'll show you the one-handed build after. You could go for your heavy build, which is based around Blood Rain. Now this is where things start to deviate. If you're going Blood Rain, so obviously that means you're investing into heavy hitter. The question here is, Wulps does increase your bonus damage. You're going to get interrupted a lot. In my opinion, if you're running a heavy hitter build, you need to invest into Sting Like a Bee. You need to make sure you have the bonus there. And this one extra remaining point can kind of go into whatever you want between, you know, Seeing Stars, Blunt Force, Razor's Edge, Cutting Gloves. It really just depends on what you're looking for. You could go for the extra 5% balance bar. I don't recommend that. I think the dismemberment is better. And this is a build that's very similar to what Scotty runs. This is heavy, sharp weapon build, essentially. Now, Scotty gets away with it because buffing his heavy damage means more damage in a larger area. On her, it's more single DPS. And the reason why you're building Sting Like a Bee is because you don't need the heavy damage on basic units, on unpossessed units. You're better off just swinging once or twice with Stings Like a Bee rather than one with heavy hitter. And this is much better for if there are two enemies around you, because if there's two enemies around you, Scotty needs one heavy swing. One character's dead, the other character's already pre-damaged, and because they took damage, they get stunned. They're not interrupting you. He could also go for Sting Like a Bee, one, and just start swinging through and go for the heavy when there's only one enemy. On Mia, she goes for a heavy attack, she's going to get interrupted because the other enemy is going to hit you. And if it doesn't kill, and she has to swing again, that's another opportunity for an interrupt. So the Sting Like a Bee is better for the crowd control. For a meme build, she doesn't really have a great meme build. Quicker cooldown takes 12 seconds off your cooldown. That would drop it from 120 to 108. That is not a significant enough change to move the needle. It's also not an ability you're really looking to spam too much. You're going to use it once a point fight, sometimes twice a point fight if the demon has insane slowdown. But most of the time, it's not really going to matter, because as soon as your ability ends, if you don't drop your fear level down, you get possessed and you kill your team. Alternatively, she has no damage, no defense. So you could run something similar on Tougher Than Hal, or the Amulet abilities. This is terrible in my opinion. Same thing, you could run something around Seasoned Survivor. These are terrible because now you're losing all that bonus damage that's separating her. You're kind of turning her into a knockoff Henry. And Henry's better at damage reduction. If you want the damage reduction, play Henry. The build I personally run for her is kind of based around a one-handed build. So, Last Word 3, Artful Dodger 3, Devastating Force 4, Industrial Strength at 4. 1, 1, 3. 1, 1, 1, 3. So, one-handed, light, a little bit of health. No heavy hitter, because I don't care about blood rate. I'm only using that on boss units. And I'm not really worried about anything else. I just want the maximum damage so I can swing as quickly as possible. Now, this is the last note I will end it on. What constitutes one-handed weapons? She cannot use the chainsaw. The chainsaw does not count. So, for 1 speeds, you have the mace, which is your top option. For 5 speeds, you have the hunting knife, which is your only option. At 5 speed. The syringes are two-handed. They do not count. At 3 speed, you have the machete, the meat cleaver, the meat hammer, the pickaxe. So in total on this build, you have 6 options that are available to you. These are some of the relatively weaker options. These are very similar to Support Ash's options. So if you are playing her as you can play her as sort of a tankier version of Support Ash. If you like how Support Ash plays, she is the warrior for you. That being said, when it comes to picking your weapons, the pickaxe is the weapon I would prioritize the least because it's blunt. She does benefit from having these two here. She does benefit a little bit from sharp weapons rather than the blunt. The way I would tier it is this. Your mace and machete are your 1-2 option. They're pretty even. The mace is your best bet pretty much all the time. It's a little bit slower, but it's always going to do the most damage no matter what. Doesn't matter if you are level 25 and you have a legendary machete, the mace, a legendary mace is going to do more damage than a legendary machete. Essentially, her level 25 just makes this as a machete is now a solid number 2 option instead of being in this grab bag at 3. It's going to be mace, machete, and everything except the pickaxe is at 3. Hunting knife, meat cleaver, meat hammer. Meat hammer is pretty good if you can get a rarity. Meat cleaver is pretty good if you can get a rarity. Hunting knife is worse unless it's purple or legendary. If purple or legendary, you're going to run that. But the mace is actually going to be, the mace will be better. A common mace is better than every single previously mentioned weapon unless it is purple or higher. Just note on that. You have to have a purple meat cleaver, a purple meat hammer, a purple on the pickaxe, purple on the hunting knife in order to surpass a common mace. That's why your mace is your top option. The machete, a common mace, is better than a regular machete and a blue machete. If you have a purple or a legendary, it's going to be better. Once you hit a blue, if you get a blue mace, you need a legendary machete to overcome that. So, those are really your options. And if you don't like the speed, if you want to be a bit faster with stings like a bee, just drop the mace for the machete, or whatever your highest rarity is. Alright, like I said, I put the pickaxe at the back, and right above it is the hunting knife, because the hunting knife is the least damage of all of those options. So, this is the build that I'm personally running, and it's worked pretty well for me, but unfortunately she is a glass cannon. She plays like a knockoff version of Scotty. Scotty is better for crowds, whereas she's better for single target DPS. She's also better for handling solo demon. She can 1v1 a boss a lot better than Scotty can, because she can kind of just pop her power at low fear and swinging, and by the time you know, after a few seconds, after about 4 to 5 seconds, she's full fear, you know, that demon's not going to know what hit her. I 1v1 3 bosses tonight in one game, where the only reason why I didn't 1v1 them the 4th time was they ran away. And I didn't have stamina. Henry has much more defensive options available to him. And in terms of abilities, his ability is better than her ability. Her ability is, I can't be possessed, but you can do whatever else you want to me. His ability is, I can be possessed, but you can't do anything else to me. You can't stun me, you can't damage me. The only thing you can do is possess me, or grab me. Whereas she's like, okay, well, I can't be possessed now, but I mean, I can still take a shit ton of damage, I can still get knocked out of revives, I can still get knocked out of cards. She's not touching Warrior Ash. But if I'm going to rate them, I'm going to rate them in order. How they appear in the screen is currently the Warrior ranking, because Warrior Ash is still the most well-rounded. He doesn't have any weaknesses into his kit other than the standard Warrior weaknesses. He is superior to each of the other Warriors in one way or another. He has defensive options over Scotty, he has offensive options over Henry, and he has safety options over Mia. He can deal the most total damage without being a strict glass cannon. Scotty, because of the nerf a little bit, in my opinion, to Henry, in that supports have gotten better. Supports and leaders have gotten better, means Henry is less of a necessity as a solo survivor. You can get by a little bit more. Supports are better, leaders are better. Scotty synergizes better with them. He deals with crowds better than Henry does. These two are kind of a toss-up between, do you want crowd control and damage, versus do you want to stay alive longer and keep your team alive longer? And then Mia's in that glass cannon build of, you know, she can destroy everything if she lets her fear get out of control, but she can also kill her whole team and be stuck in a situation where now she's low health, she has to fight a whole horde off on her own while her team dies around her. So, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.